Hey guys, John here. Welcome to the channel. I'm excited because today we're going to take a look at the excellent Fractal Audio FM9 MKII Turbo. One of the greatest amp modeling / multi-effect platforms ever made. And this is going to be a lot of fun. Now this thing is incredible. It does everything that you can imagine and more. So in this video, I'm not going to be able to cover everything that it does, but I'm going to try to look at it from my perspective and hopefully give you some insight on how I like to use this thing and why I think this thing is so good. But let's start with a demo song with one of my favorite amp models in this device. Take a listen. That sounded so good. As I said, that amp model, the DUS Metall amp model, is one of my favorite amp models in this thing. I use it every day for just playing metal riffs and stuff like that. And the funny thing is, that amp model isn't even directly based on an actual amplifier. It's actually based off a schematic of a Digital VH4, I believe. And it's an earlier amp model that they made before they even got their hands on an actual Digital. So it sounds kind of different, but I really like the texture and the tightness, and yeah, it's just an excellent amp model. I recommend checking it out. And the guitar that I used was my ESP LTD Phoenix Deluxe 1000 Evertune in silver sunset burst, I believe, with the Fishman Fluence modern pickups in it. Sounds really crushing, tight, and yeah, just awesome. And as I said, I just really like the texture of the tone there. It just sounds very nice and very organic and very amp-like. Even though this actual tone, you probably cannot get that tone in actual real life with tube amplifiers because it's sort of based on a schematic and not really based on an amplifier in real life. So if you want to get that tone, you're going to need to get one of the Fractal units. Now I'm a simple guy. I like my amp tone simple, not with a lot of effects and stuff. But for this video, I'm using the scenes feature, which I will get into a little bit later in the video. And I'm using that to switch on or off some certain effects. And in this song, I enabled the flanger in some sections, as well as the pitch block at the end of the song. And in the cabinet block, I used one of the stock legacy cabinets, which is an ML SoundLab IR from the Angle cab, the 4x12. And I blended two mics together. Now this video would not have been possible without the wonderful and very kind folks from G66. They are the distributor in Europe for Fractal Audio products. Very nice people. They are excellent. When you buy one of these, you even get a box of chocolates. You get some papers with tutorials and helpful links and all that stuff. Trust me, if you want to get a Fractal Audio product, go to g66.eu and you can buy all the stuff there. And yeah, you can expect some great service. Thank you so much to you guys at G66 for making this happen. Now, the FM9 MKII Turbo has been living on my desk for a while now, and I've been enjoying this thing so much and using it a lot. I'm quite familiar with the Fractal Audio products. I think 10 years ago or so, I got my first Fractal. That was the XFX2. Loved it. I vividly remember that the first time when I plugged in a guitar, I felt like, wow, this thing you know, the quality of the instrument really shines through here. And then I plugged in another guitar and I was like, wow, you know, the individual characteristics of all the guitars come through really well, and it just felt and sounded so realistic to me. Then later I upgraded to the XFX2 XL Plus, which was excellent as well. Then I upgraded to the XFX3, which was amazing, obviously. I mean, that's like the flagship. This is one step below that in terms of the ins and outs and the processing. However, this thing is still amazing. And I think last year or so, I also got an FM3 Mark II Turbo, which is also awesome. It's, you know, similar in terms of the depth, but it's not as wide, and it only has 3 switches and less processing power, and obviously less ins and outs. And yeah, my journey with Fractal Audio has been great. They're just wonderful units. You can do everything you want with these things. I mean, almost everything, but you can go so in depth with these things, and that's, I guess, why a lot of professional musicians like to use these, like Metallica, John Mayer, The Edge from U2, and the list goes on and on and on and on. If you want to know the artists that use these things, go to the Fractal Audio website, and there's a big list there of people who use these devices. Now, the FM9 Mark II Turbo is my favorite Fractal at this time. And the reason why that is, and why I chose this over the XFX3 as of right now, is because of the switches. I like to get hands-on with this thing while it's living on my desk. And also because of the form factor. It's big, but it's not huge. And in terms of the processing and ins and outs, it does everything that I need. And it's just easier to move around and all that stuff when you compare it to the XFX3, which was living in my rack. And yeah, this thing is sturdy. It's a really sturdy box. It's really well made, and it's going to be really hard to break this thing. And that's my experience with all the Fractal Audio units in general. Just, yeah, super well built and super sturdy. Now, one thing that I really like to do with the FM9 myself is use it as an audio interface, which is also what I used to do with my XFX3. It does have a limitation there. You can only use these at 48 kilohertz, which is a shame, but yeah, that's just what it is, and it's the sample rate that I use with all my sessions anyway. But if you're looking to buy a Fractal unit to use as your audio interface, it's important to know. But for recording guitars, for reamping guitars, and all that stuff, these things act really well as an audio interface, and I use them for mixing as well, and it just works almost flawlessly. The only flaws that I've ever encountered with the Fractal Audio devices when using them as an audio interface was one, that sometimes the USB just drops out. I think this happens with power spikes when I turn on or off a tube amplifier, for example. And then you have to turn off and on the Fractal unit to have it connected again to your computer. And with some of the Fractal devices, I've dealt with a bit of latency when recording the track. So you would record a track, and then the actual audio would be a little bit later. In those cases, you have to input a sort of offset on your track delay. So those are some minor things that I've had to deal with, but aside from that, very solid indeed. And like I said, reamping is excellent with these things. You can run your audio from the DAW back into the unit and, you know, process everything again. It also works really well together with real amplifiers, which obviously is great for me because I have a lot of tube amplifiers. And I use the special cables, the Humbuster cables that you can also get from G66 or Fractal. And they provide a very low noise signal coming from the Fractal into your tube amplifier and then into a reactive load or a cabinet with a mic and back into the unit. So, you know, when you record your guitar into this and put it into another device, the signal is going to be very clean. So the DI tracks that I always record with this as well are always pristine and at the perfect level. So when I go from the output 3 in my case, into an amplifier and set the output level 3 to max, it's unity gain basically. And that's really helpful. It makes everything very easy. In terms of the I/O, this thing has plenty. Multiple inputs, multiple loops, multiple outputs, multiple expression pedal outputs, and all that stuff. If these 9 switches aren't enough for you, you can even add additional switches. But even with the FM3, you can go quite crazy in terms of the functionality with the switches. I haven't even scratched the surface because I use this thing for recording basically. But with the FM9 already, there are so many possibilities. that you can basically do anything you'd want with these 9 switches. Now, one thing that I love about the Fractal Audio stuff is the scenes feature, which is what I use a lot, even for recording and in the demos in this video. And what you can basically do with the scenes is create up to 8 presets within a preset. So with the scene, you can change effects, you know, bypass effects and stuff like that. Switch to another amplifier, switch to another amp channel with slightly different settings and stuff. So it's a very powerful feature. And I really recommend using that feature if you have one of these products. And if you do, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Now, I mentioned channels. Yes, because the amplifiers, for example, and the cabinets and stuff, and many of the effects have 4 channels each. That means that for the amplifier, you can load up to 4 different types of amp models or settings or whatever, and switch between them in one single preset. Now, since you can load 2 amplifiers at the same time in the FM9, that means that you get access to 8 different types of amp tones in one single preset, and that is very powerful. Now, if the standard functionality of the switches isn't enough, you can go into the app or edit this on the unit itself and change the layouts. And the layouts give you access to anything you want, basically, but you could do, for example, one layout with the scenes, and then a layout where you get to switch on or off various effects and more. And you can access the different layouts very easily by sort of going from heel down to toes down on these switches over here, and then you get to select all the different layouts. Now for me, I basically almost only use the preset selection and the scenes selection. That's enough for me with recording and everything. But just know that with the foot switches and with the layouts and everything, you can go crazy in depth. I haven't seen another modeling platform that can go that far. It's really insane. Now, the amp modeling in the Fractal Audio products obviously is famous for being awesome. There is a lot of attention to detail there. And Cliff, the guy behind Fractal Audio, he's a genius. And he has added so many amp models in there and so many unique ones as well. I think at this point in time, I'm now in firmware 8.0. There are like 328 amplifier models to choose from. Now, the controls that you get access to in the amplifier block are absolutely insane. You can go in there and change the tubes, the bias, and all that stuff. And a lot of stuff I don't even understand and I never touch, to be honest. But you've got stuff like in and output EQ. Input EQ is very cool and I use that a lot. You can use that to shape the signal of the guitar going into the amplifier. So if I want a little bit more definition and tightness, for example, I would raise the low cut and increase the definition. That's a great way of fine-tuning the signal going into the amplifier. And yeah, I really recommend using that feature to change the response and the overall sound of your amps if you're not getting the sound that you want out of them. Of course, there are also the speaker impedance curves, which are excellent. And yeah, a bunch of other things, and you can really go crazy there, but as I said, I don't really do that. I like to keep things simple. And yeah, there are some really unique amplifiers in there. You've got Fenders, Foxes, Friedmans, Marshalls, Dietzels, and the list goes on. So this is one of those platforms that if you want a lot of options with a great sound quality and a high level of realism, it's just, you can't go wrong with the Fractal Audio units. It's absolutely insane. Nowadays, I don't really go exploring that much more. I don't like to try a lot of new amplifier models. I have a few that I like and I just use those. In that way, it sort of stays easy for me to get a great tone quickly without having to go through all the amplifier models and stuff. Now, the amp models are important, but of course the cabinets as well. With the FM9, you get access to 2 different cabinet models, and you can choose between the legacy cabinets, which are like 2,000 cabs from various vendors like ML Sound Lab and Ownhammer, and IRs that Fractal Audio made themselves, as well as some old cabinets from the older units. You can load up to around 1,024 or so user IRs, which is great. I love that. But recently they also added the dyna-cabs feature. And with the dyna-cabs, you can pick 2 cabinets and then move the mics around and stuff. So it's a bit more intuitive that way. You can customize the sound a little bit more. So that's a cool feature as well that we're also going to use later in this video. Now, another thing that's really cool and kind of unique about the Fractal stuff is the grid. When you look at an empty grid, it's basically a blank canvas. And you can create signal chains in any way that you can imagine, basically. So it's the most flexible way of doing that out there. But it takes a little bit more work. Sometimes you have to create your input. You have to, drag the wires across the signal chain and all that stuff, and then create the output and put all the blocks in there and stuff. But it does mean that it's super flexible and highly customizable. So that's awesome. The CPU power on this thing is great. On the FM3, it's already pretty great, but this one has even more CPU power, and the XFX3 even more than that. So you can really go crazy with the amount of effects that you're loading into a single preset. Recently, they also added seamless or gapless switching between the presets. So that's also great, really cool. So now when you switch between a preset, you won't hear a little gap of silence. That's awesome. And in terms of the effects, I said I'm not a heavy effects user, but this thing has a lot of effects. Flangers, phasers, various types of delays, various types of EQs, wahs, pitch shifting, synthesizers, etc. And when you go into an effects block and choose the effects type that you want, you can go into the parameters and deep edit everything, which is insane. You can really customize the effects here. And the quality of the effects overall is just super impressive. Again, very professional and very pristine sounding. Now, the user interface on the device itself is somewhat complicated. You can do everything you want. It's a complicated device, so naturally the UI is going to be a little bit complicated because of that, but the computer app makes life a lot easier. You can do everything that you want to do on the unit on the app as well, including assigning all the foot switches and all that stuff. So I really recommend hooking this up to your PC when you get one of these to edit the unit from there, especially when you're in a studio and are playing next to a computer anyway. However, when you get one of these things for the first time, I would recommend getting to know the user interface a little bit first, because it's definitely handy to know how to work one of these things. And the user manuals, of course, they explain everything very well. Okay, enough babble. I'm really going on a tangent here, but yeah, love this thing. But now I want to try some more tones. I want to try a nice clean tone now with my Schecter PT SLS Elite with the Fishman Fluence Moderns in it on the neck pickup. And I want to add some effects and make it nice and airy. And I'm going to use the 65 Bassguy normal amplifier, which is one of my favorite clean amplifiers in this unit. Let's take a listen. Wonderful, that sounded awesome. So again, the 65 Bassguy normal amplifier. And in the cabinet block, again, I used some legacy cabs by ML Sound Lab, the 2x12 USA cabinet to be precise. Again, a blend between two mics, a 121 and a 57 this time. Now for the main sound, I had a pedal compressor on as well as a reverb, a really nice sounding reverb. And I must say that the reverbs in general on these things are absolutely insane. I used the Asylum Hall reverb, which was the one that spoke to me the most for this part. And then in the main sections, I have a digital delay on as well, synced to the tempo, which is 150 beats per minute, I think, and I set it to a dotted eighth. And then there's one part in the song where I switch off the delay and enable a phaser effect, which is the script 90 phaser. And then on the other side, so the right side, I enabled the chorus in 1 or 2 sections. And that was the digital chorus, and I like what the effects added to the overall atmosphere of this little song. Really good. And yeah, the effects in general and the reverb especially just sound really natural. And yeah, it was really pleasant to my ears anyway. Now I want to try some crunch tones, some mid-gain crunch tones with my Gibson Les Paul 60s standards to be precise, with the Duncan JB in the bridge. And I'm using the Friedman Smallbox amplifier. Check it out. Awesome, that sounded great. A lot of string definition there and some nice chunk, but still not super high gain, just a great crunchy tone with a wonderful mid-range. For the intro section, I just used the amplifier with the cab block. In the cabinet block, I am using the dyna-cabinet feature this time with a Friedman 4x12 with V30s and a blend between 2 different microphones. I'm also using some subtle room reverb there. And in the second section, I enabled a phaser and a fuzz block for an interesting and different kind of texture. And then in the rocky section after that, I turned those off and enabled the TS808 mod, which is like a tube screamer. Really nice tone, and this definitely shows you that the Fractal stuff is capable of doing much more than just metal tones, which is for some reason what some people think. Okay, now I want to try one more tone, a really heavy tone, aggressive tone, and wild tone, with my ESP LTD Phoenix-7 Baritone with the Fishman Affluence modern 7-string pickup in it. Take a listen. right, that was great. So that was the guitar going into a simple preset. Once again, as I said, I like to keep my presets very simple. It's basically the 5153 Stealth model, the red channel. It has a lot of tightness and a lot of clarity, and it's great and aggressive. And I used the matching dyna-cab, the 5153 4x12 cabinet. And in one section, I enabled a chorus block for a different type of sound. So yeah, that sounded great. Now, if it wasn't obvious, I absolutely love this thing. I use it a lot already, and I'm definitely going to use it a lot in the future. It's just such a solid and reliable device, and it gets frequent updates, so you know that you're taken care of when it comes to improving the unit very regularly, I might add. So that's really impressive. They keep adding new amplifiers, new effects, new parameters, and new functionality and bug fixes and everything like that. So, you know, these things aren't very affordable, but being a Fractal Audio customer in general is quite great. And that same goes for G66. Just a great company and great people to buy from, basically. These things are very, very impressive, and I'm very happy to be able to call myself an FM9 Mark II Turbo owner by Fractal Audio. So that was this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in one of these, check out the links below. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the Fractal Audio products, especially the FM9. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.